San Francisco Business Times and Silicon Valley Business Journal. We have a wonderful, inspiring program for you this morning. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Bay Area Hall of Fame. This year also marks the 75th anniversary of the Bay Area Council. We wish that we were celebrating happier circumstances, live in a ballroom, energized by, maybe 1,000 or so people gathered at this annual inspiring event. But you do not make it through 75 years without encountering and overcoming many obstacles and adversity. We have seen our fair share of daunting challenges over the years, from earthquakes to fires to floods and deep economic downturns. But every time we've weathered the storm, and every time we find our way back to a better Bay Area. Indeed, we have innovated and invented our way out of some of the very worst times. It speaks to the resilience of our region and the vision and commitment of the member companies who, like the forward-thinking business leaders who created the Bay Area Council in 1945, continue to believe the Bay Area is the best region on the planet. So despite the current dark days, keep the vision and remember, this is a region of entrepreneurship, opportunity, and possibility. Business and philanthropic leadership than the incredible visionary leaders we are honoring today, the late and beloved Bernard J. Tyson, Susan Desmond-Hellman, and the Trefethen family. So each in their own way has always seen bigger, better, and what can be. Their inspiring stories and impact offer us hope and optimism. Their examples show that by working together, we can and will overcome the challenges we face and come out stronger than ever. And our speakers this morning, boy, I can't wait. We have such a lineup. I wish for all of you that this event provides you inspiration, hope, vision, insight, and a belief there's a shining light at the end of a tunnel that looks kind of dark at the moment, but know that on the other side, there is a great future for our Bay Area. So be inspired this morning. Thanks to our sponsors and our amazing team who put this event together. And now, speaking of hardworking, visionary leaders with passion and determination to continue building a better Bay Area for all, please welcome Jim Wunderman, President and CEO of the Bay Area Council.
Hey, that worked. Hey, Mary, thank you. Thank you very much. You're so kind, and you've been such an amazing chair of the Bay Area Council during a time we weren't anticipating when you became chair that the region would be going through these kinds of challenges, and you've just been up to every single one, and I just enjoy working with you so much. We've been friends for a long time, but getting to work together like this has been just awesome, and you're so committed to the Bay Area Council and to this region. I want to start by thanking Kaiser Permanente and Greg Adams, who I'll introduce shortly, for serving as the presenting sponsor of this event. It happens to be that Kaiser and the Bay Area Council are both celebrating our 75th anniversaries together this year. It's not by accident, because it was largely in part because of Kaiser Permanente that the Bay Area Council was formed at the end of World War II. So thank you, Greg, and we'll talk a little more about you in a moment. I wanted to welcome to Kaiser Permanente Carrie Owen Pleats. Carrie Owen Pleats is the new Northern California Regional President of Kaiser's, just joined, and is going to be, I believe, I don't think it's been announced, so I'll do it. She'll be the co-chair of the Bay Area Council Health Committee. So we're really excited to have you join and work with us going forward. And with that, congratulations, Greg, on your 75th anniversary. I know it's a really tough year for you in a number of ways. We look forward to hearing from you. We've had great sponsorship this year. We wondered going into our first virtual event of this kind how it would go. And you as our members and our supporters just came through so well for us. It's so important at this time. So I want to thank our diamond sponsors, who are the Bank of America, Common Spirit Health, Gilead, P&E, TMG Partners, Union Bank. You stepped up big time for us, and we really appreciate it. I wanted to thank you, Mary, and the San Francisco Business Times for being our media sponsor and promoting the event. And we have several platinum level sponsors as well, who are McKinsey and Company, Royal Business Bank, Sutter Health, and UC San Francisco. So thank you to all our major sponsors. Showing on the screen are our gold sponsors. Thank you very, very much for your support and stepping up as you have. There's quite a few companies that came forward at a time when, it's not easy. And in talking, and our silver sponsors, I know in talking to a lot of companies, you folks said, we're having a lot of trouble, a lot of challenges, unprecedented, but we want to support the Bay Area Council and the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame because it's such an important part of our culture here in our region. I want to thank the executive committee of the Bay Area Council, which Mary chairs. What an amazing group. So helpful, so supportive at this challenging time. Means the world to us. And when I say us, it is very much us. I'm blessed to have, I think, the greatest professional staff of an organization of this kind in my team. What a great group of people who, occupying these squares on the screen since the time we all went home back in March. Just been working their tails off to keep the Bay Area Council going and address issues in the region we didn't expect to have to address, and I know it's very, very hard. This is hard for all of us. So, who would have expected after this great, incredible economic run that we would see, jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs going away, businesses closing. It's so difficult on our families. The constant talk of people and companies leaving the region. Our competitiveness is in question. Our local government institutions, schools are really stressed. Our kids are, not where they need to be with other kids in school. It's just tough on everybody. We're not alone in this. It seems to have hit our region really hard. We're working, you should know we're working really hard on all those issues. And, then of course, we've done reasonably well, I think, in terms of COVID-19 and the way the region responded to it. But we're seeing a big surge here right now in California and in the Bay Area. And we were hoping, I think, not to see it. And just in a couple of days, it happens to be that we're holding a meeting with all of the county health officers from around the Bay Area to see if we could get everybody on a common platform. It's hard to do, to talk about how we talk about this, how we inform the public, how we work together, how can the business community respond. And so in that regard, since this is a bilateral conversation, we wanted to put forward a poll question really quickly. How would you rate the effectiveness of the public health other leaders in response to COVID-19? Too restrictive, just right, or not enough? And so take a few seconds to respond to that, please. Just click away, I think is how it works. And we'll get you those responses. I've talked to so many of you about this, heard a lot of different answers and approaches and perspectives on this. And I know it's tough as we were, seem to be coming out of it, and now we're going backwards. This makes it really hard. So we'll get the results in a minute. Despite the fact that we have the economic challenges that we have and the health challenges that we have, this region's been through it before, as Mary says, and over the course of the 75 years that the council has been an organization, just in my time, so the .com bust, and then the mortgage meltdown, and now this, and so we've had a cyclical economy, but we have always responded. And if you just take a look at the Bay Area, it's an incredible place with incredible people, incredible companies, innovation, and I believe we'll come back, but it won't be just because because we wish it to be. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and we're going to be in an environment that is different. It's not, we're not going to come back the way things were before. We're going to have to make adjustments, but we've been good at that, and I suspect we'll be good at it again, and we'll work together and we'll make it happen. As Mary said, we're not only honoring phenomenal people today, but we're also incredible leaders, but we all amazing speakers, very timely speakers in the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. So I want to thank Alex Marin, who is the Chairman of the Hall of Fame Committee, for his leadership, not just in leading the committee, but in making this event possible. He worked really hard at this this time around, and Alex, greatly appreciate you kind of doing what you did to make this event more special than ever. And now we have a chance to memorialize this event by taking a photo of everybody, one big headshot. It's called a group fee. I haven't done this before. So in a moment, I'm expecting that a box will appear on your screen, and there's a button, I think it says Go Selfie, and you click on that button, and it will take a picture of you and link you up with everyone else. So go ahead and click that button if you will. Don't be shy. Then it says, once you say you do it, it says take a photo. I'm going to retake mine because I wasn't smiling. That's a little bit better. And we will share that with you, and you can share it on the social media using the hashtag BizHOF. So thanks everybody for supporting and coming today. We're really excited. Yeah, take those photos. I see you doing it. And with that, let me introduce to you the chairman and CEO of Kaiser Permanente. I have to say, in looking at Kaiser, this is it's not only the healthcare institution of our time. I think it's one of the great business stories of our time, and it's in the years I've been at the Bay Area Council, it's been one of my great pleasures to work with Kaiser Permanente on so many different issues over the years. So again, welcome Greg Adams, and we want to hear some comments from Greg, and on with the show. So thanks everybody, really appreciate it. Enjoy the day. I see there's a photo rendering going on. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to jump off and hand it.
Jim, I'm here now. Thanks for your leadership. We're adjusting to our technological challenges. But thank you, and Mary, thank you for acknowledging the Bay Area as the finest region in the country. We're really proud to be here today to partner with the Bay Area Council on its 25th Bay Area Hall of Fame and the 75th anniversary. And as you heard Jim say, this is Kaiser Permanente's 75th anniversary, and we're so proud to call the Bay Area our home. I think for all of us, today's event is happening at an extraordinary time in the history of our world and certainly our country. We've been challenged, we have been pushed, and we have relied upon each other to ensure a strong and coordinated response for our communities. I would be remiss if I didn't really call out my colleagues, my healthcare colleagues, Lloyd Dean from Common Spirit, Sarah Crevens from Sutter Health, and Mark Larrett from UCSF. We've spent countless hours, especially at the beginning of this pandemic, working together to develop solutions and to protect the health and safety of our communities. And as I acknowledge and think about our frontline workers across Kaiser Permanente, there have been several Bay Area Council members that have supported us and been on the journey with us. And I just want to do a brief shout out to a few of them. Peter and Eve, who donated at the beginning of this pandemic much needed masks to our frontline workers. Thank you to the Clorox company that stepped up and provided us with critical supplies of bleach wipes. Thank you. And then Microsoft, who joined Kaiser Permanente, the American Hospital Association, Kearney, and the UPS to launch the Protective People initiative. Thank you. I also want to just do a shout out to Mayors London Breed and Libby Schaff. Your leadership through this pandemic and what you have done for our communities and what you've done for our healthcare organization is nothing short of remarkable. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for leading. Thank you for being present and taking on the public health challenge that we have. So thank you. And then I want to just note the city of Berkeley and Mayor Jesse Aragon. You were instrumental in helping Kaiser Permanente move really immediately to set up a 7,700 square feet COVID testing lab. And today we're doing more than 75,000 tests per day, per week rather, in that lab. So thank you for your tremendous support. You know, despite our challenging year, I'm glad that we were able to gather together and honor the Bay Area's most accomplished business and philanthropic leaders. And among those 3 leaders being inducted into the Hall of Fame today is my friend and former CEO and chairman of Kaiser Permanente, Bernard J. Tyson. Bernard was a passionate leader. He was dedicated to Kaiser Permanente. He dedicated his life to Kaiser Permanente, to making a difference in healthcare. He tackled some of the biggest problems in health and healthcare, and he was also committed to the Bay Area and to the future of this region. So on behalf of Kaiser Permanente, I congratulate Bernard, but I also want to congratulate Desmond-Hellman and the Trefethen family, who are also being inducted into the Hall of Fame today. So I'll keep my comments brief. Congratulate our inductees. I wish us safe health, and I thank each of you for your leadership as we move forward through the next several months, which will be a challenge, but I am convinced that we're up to the task. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg and Kaiser Permanente, for your support and leadership in our community, our state, and our nation. We launched the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame in 1995 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bay Area Council and to remember and celebrate business, philanthropic, and civic leadership that makes the Bay Area so special. It is the brainchild of Dick Rosenberg. Over the past 25 years, we have inducted 77 outstanding Bay Area leaders. Let's take a look back. Wow, what a group of people. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, guiding us in selecting our honorees is a set of criteria that our committee believes best defines excellence in business, philanthropy, and civic leadership. These criteria include led a Bay Area-based business to a position of national prominence, pioneered an industry or business innovation that has had a significant impact on our regional economy, enrich the civic leadership of the Bay Area and improve the overall quality of life and well-being in our region, exemplifies excellence in business leadership and corporate citizenship, and respected and admired by industry peers. As we get ready to recognize our Hall of Fame class this year, I would like to thank my colleagues on the Hall of Fame committee. Names are listed on the screen. Thank you for the time, thought, and deliberation that you give each year to ensure that we honor our selection criteria. Now, let me return to Jim for some technical information on the program.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Greg. So basically, we're going to move into the Hall of Fame induction segment, and to move to the next session, what you do is just click on the green button in the lower left hand of your screen or window, and that or you can go back to the agenda page and click on the next session. So hopefully, this is new to us using this format. It should work really well for the day, but that's what you do. And if you have any questions, you can hit the chat feature and we'll get them resolved. So again, on with the show, and we'll enjoy being together today virtually. Thanks, everybody.
Today's first honoree was a giant in the healthcare world, a former chair of the Bay Area Council. He was taken from us far too soon. The contributions and legacy he leaves behind continue to inspire us. To introduce our first honoree, please welcome another healthcare giant, Lloyd Dean, Chairman and CEO of Common Spirit. Lloyd? and CEO of Common Spirit.
Thank you, Alex. It is my great honor to introduce today's first Hall of Fame honoree, Bernard Tyson. Bernard was a great leader, a great competitor, but much more importantly, my dearest friend. Bernard's love for Kaiser Permanente was known by all, but his dedication to doing right for his members, for the employees, and for the communities that he served was second to none. Bernard, as a human being, was an example that we all admired, that I admired. So now, let's learn a little bit more about Bernard J. Tyson, the man.
Many kids dream of becoming a firefighter, a nurse, or an astronaut when they grow up. Bernard Tyson dreamed of running a hospital. Raised in a working-class family in Vallejo, Tyson's career aspirations were inspired by watching his mother's struggles with severe health issues. Over an incredible almost 40-year career, Tyson rose to become one of the world's most influential and transformational healthcare leaders. Almost all that time was spent at Kaiser Permanente, including as chairman and CEO from 2013 until his tragic death in 2019. Among his many leadership roles at Kaiser Permanente, Tyson led the team that developed the iconic and award-winning Thrive campaign in the early 2000s. It reflected both Kaiser Permanente's and Tyson's deep commitment to a more holistic, preventative view of healthcare.
And it's not just health care, it's lifestyle, it's behavior. It's the whole ecosystem that makes up a person's day.
Tyson was a driving force behind Kaiser Permanente's pioneering adoption of digital technologies to improve the quality of healthcare and make it more accessible and more affordable to more people. Tyson also envisioned the potential of technology to expand access to healthcare services through virtual channels. Under his leadership as CEO, Kaiser Permanente grew from 9.1 million members to 12.3 million members. Revenues climbed from $56 billion to $84 billion and became a national model for quality care. But Tyson's impact was felt well beyond the healthcare world. The first African-American to lead Kaiser Permanente, Tyson used his position to champion the causes of racial justice and racial equity. An essay he wrote in 2015 described his experience as a black man in America and declared it was time to revolutionize race relations. In 2017, Time magazine named Tyson to its 100 most influential people list. Civil rights icon John Lewis penned Tyson's tribute. Poverty, housing, and homelessness were among other thorny issues that Tyson stepped up to tackle.
At Kaiser Permanente, we believe strongly that people living on the streets of America as their home is just unacceptable, and we ought to collectively own the problem and work to solve it together.
That's why Tyson launched Kaiser Permanente's $200 million Thriving Communities Fund to address homelessness, create affordable housing, and provide economic opportunities in disadvantaged communities. As chair of the Bay Area Council, he spearheaded the organization's focus on addressing homelessness at a regional level.
He did it with such a sense of bigger purpose, not just for the Bay Area, not just for Kaiser Permanente does business, but literally as a person that is a member of the human race and has a sense of basic decency.
Bernard Tyson's life ended too soon, but the sense of bigger purpose that he brought Everything he did will continue to reverberate through Kaiser Permanente and the communities it serves.
To accept the award on Bernard's behalf, we're honored to have with us Denise Bradley Tyson, who is continuing her husband's outstanding work as founder and chair of the American Heart Association Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund. I wish I were there with you, Denise, to hand you this award, and I look forward to having some kind of occasion in the not too distant future when we can do this together. We miss Bernard and we miss seeing you. Congratulations to you and your family.
Denise, it is wonderful for me to be here with you and want to thank you for all that you continue to do to heighten and to remind us of the man, Bernard Tyson. There's no question that his passing is still raw for all of us. But we come here today lifted up by the great work that you, along with the American Heart Association, continue to do, honoring this great man's and friend's legacy. His voice and his work around health equity, around racial equity, around racial justice is something that was important to him, important to this country. If you could maybe share with us, as he looks down upon this moment, what do you think this award means and would mean to Bernard?
I think Bernard would start by, and I think you can all, in all of our minds, his vivid, brilliant smile probably comes to mind first. And he would say thank you to his Bay Area Council family. He would say thank you to his Kaiser family, Kaiser Permanente family, on whose behalf or who worked tirelessly alongside of him to achieve the programmatic changes that he did while he was at Kaiser throughout his long career. And he would also say thank you to you, Lloyd, for being such, you guys had such a wonderful romance in terms of being friendly competitors, but at the end of the day, being allies and sort of being led by the same North Star in terms of wanting to deliver better healthcare outcomes for the communities that you serve. So he would be very, very honored and touched that his Bay Area Council family is recognizing him with this beautiful, beautiful award. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a lovely sculptural piece. So that's where he
Denise, a lot has been written and chronicled about Bernard's use of his voice and the pulpit that he had as the chairman of Kaiser Permanente to speak out about racial injustice, to speak out about health equities. I mean, you knew Bernard in a way that many of us could only imagine. Why do you think that was important to him? Why speaking out with all of the things that he was involved in? Why was this message and these issues so much a part of his life?
I think it was important to Bernard because it was very, very personal. not only was he, first and foremost, however anyone looked at him, we learn as African Americans that the first lens through which people often see us is through the color of our skin, not through our accomplishments. So he walked through life looking at life through that lens. And then at the same time, having been brought up in a working class family, he was sort of confronting sort of healthcare challenges that, people everywhere in terms of the choices people have is one of the things that Bernard used to say I'm sure you remember, is he wanted to create a healthcare ecosystem where people walk through the front door for their healthcare needs, as opposed to going through the back door, the emergency room, which is sort of a place of last resort for a lot of people as you sort of struggle with whether you put food on the table or you pay your rent or you look for your children's educational needs. So it was a very sort of personal journey for Bernard, which I think is part of the reason that his voice was so authentic in this space, that he was able to work across corporate lines, political lines, to get everyone around, rallying around sort of humanity, the humanitarian aspect of living life with dignity.
You have worked really hard along with the American Heart Association to establish the Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund. Two questions. One is, how can others get involved? And what are you hopeful that the impact of this fund will be on communities and on this nation?
Thank you for that question, Lloyd. The fund, I set up the fund after Bernard passed almost immediately because, as much as I love flowers and, we love cards, it seemed like there was a greater purpose in terms of how we could support and honor Bernard's legacy. Because as much work as he accomplished during his all too brief life, that there was a lot of work left to be done. I felt in some ways that he helped to establish the framework that we are now sort of looking at healthcare through, in terms of it being a holistic approach to starting with not only starting with the head, meaning the mental wellness of a person, and looking at the socioeconomic determinants that impact what kind of quality of life a person has, that there was so much work to be done still. And I think it was even underscored even more during the coronavirus, when we saw the people on the front line, the service workers, many Black and brown people who unfortunately sort of still at the sort of overall at the lower socioeconomic level, that there was too much work to be done to help make a difference. And one of the things that was important in terms of framing how we looked at the American Heart Association Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund was, for me, with my sort of Stanford and Harvard Business School hat on, looking at sort of systemic change. One, it's not just sort of doing a one-off handout to an organization, but looking at organizations, and it's really community focused in terms of we're trying to raise funds to go into every community across the country and identify community organizations and individuals who are already on the ground. They know the people whom they serve, that what can we do to sort of further empower their organizations in terms of, and we found that it doesn't take as much as you might think to make a big difference in terms of their ability to serve their community. So looking at organizations and individuals that are set already on the ground, that they possibly have they have models that can be replicated and rolled out into other communities. We're looking at continuing to partner with organizations, and thank you for leading, Common Spirit's contribution to the American Heart Association Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund, along with other members of the Bay Area Council family. I have to give a special shout out to Lynn and Mark Benioff, who, another one of Bernard's sort of, romance leaders. He was serving on the board of Salesforce when he passed, but Lynn and Mark, who are wonderful philanthropists in our community, stepped up and made this contribution to the fund. But for those, we are reaching out. We already have reached out to, and I said, I call you now part of my Bay Area family as well. So I hope y'all don't mind, because it was a privilege and a pleasure to get to know many of you through just sort of being by Bernard's side through our life journey together. That people can look at, they go to the Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund. It's on the American Heart Association website to learn more about the work that we're already doing, and that we will be reaching out to you to continue to help us do. And again, I have to thank Jim Wonderman and Mary Huss for sort of stepping up and partnering with us, along with Fortune Magazine, with Cliff and his team, in terms of helping us to sort of amplify those stories of those organizations that are doing the work. Because, I think, again, with Bernard being an authentic voice, and there being so many sort of organizations that have sort of popped up during this time, that he represents a trusted brand, partnered with the American Heart Association long-serving brand, that that your money is going towards its intended purpose. And then having their ground force, as it were, in terms of having American Heart Association's team members throughout the country, along with our corporate partners that we're establishing. Our commitment is to use this fund to figure out how together we can make a difference, a meaningful difference, achieving crew equality a reality, and changing sort of the paradigm, the healthcare paradigm for those who are challenged, particularly during these times.
Well, thank you. And Denise, one thing that I know for sure is that he is looking down and he is smiling. He is gracious that you are keeping the memory of the man and all that he contributed to society, the love that he showed for this country and for Kaiser Permanente. As we close this segment, what is one thing that you would like for everyone listening to remember about Bernard J. Tyson?
Now, that's an easy one, I think. As we continue, hopefully, to work together in terms of making meaningful change in the communities in which we live through the American Heart Association Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund, and even looking at the Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson Medical School in terms of the training that's being done for those doctors to go back in the community. I think, all of us have heard Bernard say, every day, regardless of what's on his plate, he used to always look for a beautiful moment in each and every day. I can truly say that being recognized by you, his Bay Area Council family, that this would be one of those beautiful moments that he's rejoicing in heaven to sort of see you all sort of come together, not just about honoring his legacy, but about the commitment to be a partner and supporter in our Bay Area corporate community and the communities in which we live and where our customers reside.
Well, Denise, thank you. We will forever be appreciative of the love that you showed the man and for the love that he showed us all. May God bless you. And we look forward to hearing and seeing the impact of this important fund. So God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Bay Area Council family.
Thank you.
The various markets to ensure their proper function and develop tools to foster Main Street lending and municipal government support. Jay also coordinated the global support for financial markets during the crisis. Jay is a Washington, D.C. native with an undergraduate degree from Princeton and a law degree from Georgetown. His background is in law, investment banking, and public policy. In 2012, Jay became one of 7 governors of the Federal Reserve Bank, overseeing the responsibilities of the Fed. He was nominated by Barack Obama. In February of 2018, Jay became the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank system. Winston Churchill once said, "To be an effective policymaker, one must combine the virtues of wisdom and daring." Jay possesses both of these virtues. I'm pleased to welcome my friend Jay Powell here this morning. Jay, welcome to the Bay Area Council.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here today.
Let's start off with some fundamentals. Where do you see the economy today, and how do you see the path forward?
I guess I'd say a couple things. I guess the place to start is probably to say that in the spring, we had a 2-month decline in economic activity and in employment that was by far the largest in living memory. And since then, really since May and June, the recovery of the U.S. economy has been faster and stronger than we expected. So many millions are back to work. Investment and consumption are recovering. We just met with some home builders this morning, and the housing market is very strong right across the country. But there's some other things to keep in mind. First is that the pace of improvement has been slowing, and understandably so after the outsized bounce back of May and June. The recovery has also been uneven too, with job gains greater for those at the higher end of the income spectrum than at the lower end of the income spectrum. And of course, most of the job losses were among public-facing service industry, relatively low-paid people who skew to being more minority and more women. That's who got laid off. That's where the pandemic had its economic effect. So the recovery has also been uneven, and people in the lowest quartile have gotten far fewer of their jobs back. The final thing I'll say is that the recovery is incomplete. We still have 10 million people who lost work during the pandemic who have not gotten it back. And that, by the way, that's more people than were unemployed at the peak of the global financial crisis. So we have a long way to go. And looking ahead, I would say I generally see, and most forecasters generally see, the recovery continuing at a solid pace, but with significant downside risks, especially in the near term. And of course, the near-term risk that we're most focused on is the spread of COVID these days. Across the country, we're seeing new cases, we're seeing hospitalization rise, and we're seeing states begin to impose some activity restrictions. Up to about 15 states have done so. And, the concern is that people will lose confidence in efforts to control the pandemic, and they'll pull back from activities that they think might put them at risk of infection. And there are some signs of that already. So yeah, this is very much a concern. And we've been saying all along, the economy can't fully recover until people are confident that it's safe to resume activities involving crowds of people. I ought to mention the vaccine, of course, in this spirit. So the vaccine news is certainly good news, particularly in the medium term. In the near term, there are significant challenges and uncertainties: the timing, the production, distribution, the efficacy for different groups, and even in the best case, widespread vaccination is months into the future. And with the virus now spreading at a fast rate, the next few months may be very challenging. So it's probably too soon to say with any confidence what the impact on the path of the economy will be from the vaccines, although of course they're going to turn out to be bad news when they are broadly available. I'll mention one more thing, if I may, Alex, and that is from the very start, we've been concerned about longer run damage to the productive capacity of the economy. And what that looks like is workers who are out of work for long periods of time. They may lose their contact with the labor market. They may lose their skills. And the evidence is strong that if you're out of work for a long time, it may be hard to get back the life that you had, get back to the work that you had. For families in particular, particularly women, leaving the workforce in big numbers now as children stay home, we're seeing that. And so you could see women who, not by preference, but by requirement, are at home and their careers may be hurt. And for businesses, something like this can lead to unnecessary insolvencies, and there are always going to be insolvencies, but there could be more than, and that would be tragic particularly for smaller businesses, which may have taken generations to build. So we got a long way to go. The last thing I'll say is we're not going back to the same economy. We're going back to a different economy, and we can talk more about that. But this economy will be different, and that's going to mean that those people who worked in the service industry, they may need help and support for a time as they find work in new places. So the Fed will stay here and be strongly committed to using all of our tools to support the recovery for as long as it takes until the job is well and truly done.
So the past is instructive. Your response, along with the Treasury, working hand in glove with the Treasury earlier this year, gave tremendous support to the U.S. economy by fiscal and by monetary support. How do you see that playing out in the months ahead, and how do you distinguish between the spending of the fiscal side of it and the lending on the monetary side of it?
Monetary policy and fiscal policy work in very different ways, as I'll talk about in a second. And in a severe downturn, ideally, they would both be deployed to support the recovery, complementing one another, and together providing broad support of different kinds for the economy. And so far, I would say both have been deployed quite aggressively, and the faster than expected recovery that we've seen, reflects that fact. And I would also add that there's such a long way to go to get back to full employment, to get back, frankly, to something close to the economy or akin to the economy we had just back in February. It's a long way to go, and I think it's likely the economy will continue to need support from both monetary policy and fiscal policy. So it's essentially what our tools allow us to do is to stimulate aggregate demand by lowering interest rates, and also to support the flow of credit in the economy. These are really important powers. They're very strong powers, and we've used them historically in historically aggressive ways, and appropriately so. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to do so until the job is done. But this is far from a traditional economic downturn. Suddenly, in March and April, tens of millions of people were suddenly unemployed because effectively a natural disaster happened and forced a lockdown of certain parts of the economy. And as I mentioned, the burdens fell particularly on those least able to bear them. So beyond monetary policy, what fiscal policy can do is it can provide, this is taxing and spending, can provide direct targeted income support for groups that really need it. And there hasn't been a bigger need for it in a long, long time here. And those powers to tax and spend are strictly the province of our elected representatives in Congress. They get to decide who bears the costs and who gets the benefits of those things. And it's essential in our system that it be elected representatives who do so. And in the CARES Act and a couple other bills they passed, this is the largest and fastest response to any downturn since the Great Depression. It was quite large, and I would say overall effective. Don't expect perfection from a bill that's written, at warp speed, if you will. But nonetheless, this was very strong, and I think that the stronger recovery that we've had is in particular a function of that. I'll just add that questions of financial sustainability arise. Can we afford these deficits and that kind of thing? And those are issues we're going to need to return to as a country. We won't have a choice. Ultimately, we will return to those issues. They're not issues that I would prioritize now. The time to be focusing on fiscal sustainability is when unemployment is low, when the economy is growing, when taxes are rolling in. And that's the time to really focus is during the healthy part of the business cycle, not when the unemployment rate is high and millions of people are out of work.
But Jay, as you balance the fiscal versus the monetary, there are long-term implications to either path. In choosing one over the other, it's going to determine what the future that we face is going to be. So, given the choice, which way would you go to minimize the negative impacts of too much debt or too much of a too great deficit?
Yeah, I don't see it so much as a trade-off. I would look at it this way. So I think the question with fiscal policy is, have you done too much? And, is that going to, put us on a path to an unsustainable fiscal path? The truth is we're already on one. It's not an emergency. The way you get back on a sustainable path is you have the economy growing faster than the debt for a long period of time. That's what a successful program looks like. And we will go to work on that when the economy is ready for it, I would hope, in a perfect world. And that's the way that'll work. In terms of what we do, we use our emergency tools. So we have particular tools, the lending tools that we've used to lend to state and local governments and non-financial businesses and others. Those are all available with the permission of the Secretary of the Treasury under unusual and exigent circumstances, which means in an emergency. So we're using them. When the time comes, we'll put those tools away. And no one wants the Federal Reserve to take over the function of private lending in the economy. These tools are only available when the private lending markets break down, and they did in March and April. So we came in, and the markets have reopened, and when the right time comes, and I don't think that time is yet or very soon, we'll put those tools away, as I've said. So, and there shouldn't be any long-term effects of that. I don't think that monetary policy, the whole point is for us, the goal for us is to support maximum employment and stable prices. Neither of those goals is put at risk in the long run by the actions we're taking now. Far from it. We're actually doing what we can to hasten our progress toward those goals.
Well, let's focus on the Fed side of the equation for a moment. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve Bank has grown from $900 billion in 2007 to over $7 trillion today. In 2012, when the Fed started to taper, there was the taper tantrum. And in 2018, there was another tantrum with respect to the autopilot that was announced, a program of slowing the buying of securities. So how and when do you see the Fed getting the balance sheet back to some sense of normal, by which I mean neither stimulative nor restrictive policy?
Okay, so Alex, I would say it's really premature to even think about normalizing to think about the size of the balance sheet and things like that. We're focused for now on achieving the goals that Congress has given, maximum employment and price stability. And we'll start to think about when it's time to slow down our purchases, which would slow the growth of the balance sheet, and take further steps going forward. We'll start to think about that when there's been a whole lot more progress toward those goals. But I would say, based on our experience, some of which you mentioned, we do know the steps to take, and we know that we need to carefully communicate those steps well in advance. And what we wound up doing after the global financial crisis was, in 2013, we announced that we would gradually taper our asset purchases. So they ended about a year later. So gradual move. And then the size of the balance sheet was held constant for several years. And as the economy grows, then the ratio of the Fed's balance sheet to the size of the economy shrinks. So that's what we can do. I would also say, though, in terms of, I won't go into all the detail, but what really sets the size of the Fed's balance sheet in the longer run is the public's demand for our liabilities. This probably isn't widely understood, but with the Fed is like a bank in the sense that we have assets and liabilities. We're like a small bank, except we're not small, but our balance sheet is actually less complicated than a commercial bank's is. And so we have our principal liabilities that make up for most of our liabilities are currency. And everyone knows what currency is, and the public demands that. Of course, currency is an asset in the hands of the public, and also bank reserves, which is just commercial bank deposits at reserve banks. So, and those are assets to the commercial banks, but to us, they're liabilities that we issue. So, ultimately, a lot of the growth in the balance sheet after the global financial crisis was because of increasing demand from the public for currency, and even more than that, increasing demand from the banks for bank reserves. And the reason there was so much demand for bank reserves was that banks were required to hold very much higher quantities of highly liquid assets. And one of the most favored kinds of highly liquid asset, all of the assets that we create are effectively risk-free. So they're very popular for banks. That's where a lot of the growth of the balance sheet came in. But ultimately, that's a question we will return to, and we'll use, we have a playbook, and we'll no doubt we'll improve upon it. But we know, I think, how to normalize policy over time. And one key is telegraphing everything you're going to do well in advance to avoid surprises, and then moving very slowly.
Well, let's talk about growth for a moment. We're in a global economy, and there are global factors that are influencing the growth of the U.S. economy, such as demographics, productivity, savings rates. How are these global factors, including technology, impacting your view of monetary policy?
So I guess I'd start by saying our economy is always evolving. And these are powerful and sustained global forces that you're talking about there. And they've led to fundamental changes in our economy that have important implications for the conduct of monetary policy. So we have a strategy document, and we write down what our strategy is. It's called our consensus statement. And we write down what we call our policy framework. And that needs to evolve to meet challenges. If you look back, as you can remember, well, Alex, what the challenge 40 years ago, of course, was high and rising inflation. That's what essentially central banking was about, was reestablishing credibility for getting inflation under control. And under Paul Volcker, the Fed managed to do that. Since that time, central banks around the world have done the same, and using a framework called inflation targeting. The challenges keep evolving, though, and for much of the past 2 decades, many central banks around the world have been struggling with too low inflation. And I know that's highly counterintuitive. I know for our Fed Listens events around the country that too low inflation is a challenging idea, but nonetheless, inflation that is persistently too low can pose dangers for the economy. And to see why that is the case, lower inflation means lower interest rates. And every interest rate is included an estimate implicitly of future inflation as well as a real return. Lower interest rates mean that the central bank has less room to react and in effect, less power than to support the economy in a downturn. That imparts a downward bias on economic activity, employment, and inflation. And we've seen this exact dynamic whereby low rates lead to weaker activity and lower inflation become a self-reinforcing disinflationary trend. We've seen it happening around the world, and we really don't want that dynamic to take root. And I guess I'd quickly touch on four principal changes that have emerged over recent decades, and I would say now amount to the new normal. The first is for these advanced economies, the growth rate, the trend growth rate is lower than it used to be. That's because population growth is lower, and its productivity growth is lower. Secondly, as I mentioned, the general level of interest rates has fallen around the world. and on a happier note, we saw, and some other nations did as well, over the last couple of years, historically low unemployment and really labor market conditions that were unprecedented, essentially unprecedented over the last 50 years. And we saw, importantly, we saw that the benefits of a really strong labor market began to flow in the last couple of years to those at the lower end of the income spectrum. So more of the wage gains went to people at the lower end of the income spectrum. You saw labor force participation, which is a critical statistic that the United States lags in. It moved up against all predictions, and particularly for minorities and women. So it is really hard to overstate the societal benefits of a strong labor market. So that's the third thing I would point to. And the last thing is we saw all of that without seeing inflation, troubling inflation. Of course, inflation barely responded to that. In an earlier time, there was a tight connection between very low unemployment, 3.5% in this case, around there for a couple of years, and inflation. That connection is, we knew it was weak, but we had to live through it to really see how weak it was. So we took all of that in mind. My colleagues and I actually conducted the first ever public review of our monetary policy, strategies, communications, and tools, and announced the results this summer. And we made some, I think, quite significant changes to our policy framework and the way we think about the job that we do for the public. First, we said we looked at everything we learned, and we decided to think of maximum employment as a broad, inclusive goal, meaning we will look at not just the headline number, but maximum employment implies that you're looking at minority unemployment rates and other unemployment rates, not just the top line. We also said that we would only react to shortfalls in employment. This sounds, technical, but essentially, we would say if we have an estimate of what maximum employment might look like, if we're short of that, then of course we would keep rates low. But what we're saying is even if we go past that estimate, that alone will not be enough for us to raise interest rates. We will wait till we see actual inflation or other trouble. On the price stability side of our mandate is maximum employment and stable prices. We reaffirm that our long-run goal remains inflation of 2%. But to achieve that, we need to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%, and to achieve that, we need to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. And to do that, following periods when inflation runs persistently below 2%, we will aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. This is all new for a central bank to deliberately aim to overshoot. And what it amounts to is a robust updating of our framework, again, in response to the fundamental changes in the structure of the economy that we've seen evolving persistently over the last few decades.
Well, so Jay, let's combine these two issues of global factors that are playing in the U.S. economy and putting the U.S. economy in global perspective, and the whole concept of increasing the inflation target. Is that going to impact the dollar and therefore put in jeopardy the reserve currency basis of the U.S. dollar?
I think that's quite unlikely, certainly in the foreseeable future. Over the past few decades, there's been discussion of that. People have thought maybe SDRs, which are associated with the IMF, or the euro or the renminbi, would challenge the dollar's role. It hasn't happened. The role of the dollar as a reserve currency, financing currency, invoicing currency around the world just hasn't changed over the last couple of years ago. Our dollar markets, treasury and currency markets, are the deepest and most liquid in the world. More than that, though, to be the reserve currency, if you look at our dynamic economy and financial system, look at our open capital markets, our strong democratic institutions, including an independent Federal Reserve, those are the things that really make the dollar a safe and reliable currency. And as long as those things remain true, as long as we're that country with those institutions, and then the world will choose to see the dollar as a leading reserve currency, or currently really by far the leading reserve currency. Of course, if you look through history, different currencies, it tends to be a persistent role, but it's not permanent. We have to be those things to continue to warrant that status.
So a few more minutes, so I'm going to have to ask you to go through kind of a lightning round here, Jay. So let's talk for a moment about the responses during the Great Financial Crisis, how the Fed responded to the Great Financial Crisis and its regulatory capacity, and how it's different this time. How would you characterize the banking system today vis-a-vis during the Great Financial Crisis?
So we spent a decade or more with the banks, strengthening the banks, much higher levels of capital, much higher levels of liquidity, a better sense of the risks they run and how to manage them, stress testing, resolution planning. And this time around, I'm happy to say that so far, the banks have held up well. They absorbed a tremendous amount of deposits coming in at the beginning of the pandemic. They also made a ton of loans as customers pulled down on their lines of credit. We can't. No one can be complacent about this. The banks have taken big reserves against potential losses that they expect. But I think until we're well and truly through this, no one can be in a position of being complacent, including the banks and including the supervisors and regulators.
Got it. So you've been with the Fed since 2012, first as a governor and now as chair. What have you and your colleagues learned? How has the Federal Reserve changed during your tenure?
The big part the big learning, I think, is the economic learning that I came in 2012 and you didn't really know at that point. It was impossible to know at that point whether those factors that I talked about were going to go away or were going to be persistent. I mean, I still thought that the economy might go back onto its old growth track, and many people did. It didn't, and it didn't happen anywhere in the world really among advanced economies. So that's the main economic learning. It's slower growth, lower productivity, lower interest rates, disinflationary pressures around the world, but a lot of benefits. I'll go in a different direction there, though. The thing I think that the other thing that's sunk in, and this shows up in surveys, is that large public and private institutions around the world have really struggled to hold on to the trust and faith of the public. And that's government, that's big businesses. And so I really think that it's on us to aggressively seek in our democratic system transparency, accountability, and hence democratic legitimacy. So we work really hard to reach out to the public and particularly to their elected representatives in Congress who have oversight over the operations of the Fed. We've greatly increased our interactions with members on both sides of the aisle in the House and the Senate. And our approach is to say, we'll tell you what we're thinking. We really, we want to understand what your concerns might be and listen carefully to them. And so I think if you're not doing those things and aggressively seeking transparency and accountability, you're courting trouble in this world where, generally speaking, the surveys show people are losing faith. That's the other thing I think that's become quite clear in the last decade.
Well, congratulations on what you have done there to advance that transparency and clarity for the Fed. And let me conclude with one final question, and that is about income inequality. We have characterized this recovery as a K-shaped economy where people at the bottom end have been disadvantaged and possibly permanently disadvantaged. What is the Fed's role here, and how can you turn this around and make America a more equal country?
So income inequality is obviously a big economic and social issue in our country today. And we have, I would characterize an important but limited role in reducing inequality. Of course, really to address these longstanding, deeply rooted problems of disparate outcomes by racial and gender lines and those sorts of things, that's going to take a response across government, across the society. So the biggest thing we can do, we do quite a bit of economic research analysis on the status of these issues and also on what's causing them. So we have a big operation here that's very focused on just analytics, and that we'd like to think it informs the public dialogue. More directly than that, though, I would go back to the way we look at maximum employment. We saw the benefits of a strong labor market, a 3.5% unemployment. It was really 4% for a long time. Anything in the category of unemployment that's in the 4s or the 3s is a strong labor market. And we saw the benefits falling to people who have really not participated as much in the benefits of the recovery until then. And it took 7 or 8 years to get there. So we need to do better than that. And to do that, we need all of government working on it, including monetary policy and fiscal policy. But our new framework, of course, is calculated to get us as quickly as possible back to a strong labor market, and to be very patient in raising interest rates when we do so. And the idea is that will contribute. It will certainly contribute to better economic outcomes, even though our tools, of course, can't be targeted at individual groups. But nonetheless, that approach to monetary policy should, at the margin, address inequality as well.
Well, Jay, I want to thank you. What I take away from our discussion this morning is the Fed's continued commitment to engagement, your commitment to transparency, your caution about complacency, and your determination to get our country back on a growth trajectory, and all of the underpinnings that are involved in accomplishing that. I thank you for joining us this morning. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in person in 2021. All the best, my friend. Take care.
Thanks for having me here today, Alex. Pleasure to see you.
Great pleasure. So if the audience will click on the exit button and go into the next session, I will see you there. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Alex.
Invented herself more than once and played a major role in making the Bay Area a global science leader. To introduce her, it's my pleasure to welcome Ranjana Clark, Bay Area President and Head of Global and America's Transaction Banking at Union Bank. Ranjana?
Thank you, Alex. I couldn't be more honored to introduce our next Bay Area Business Hall of Fame inductee. Throughout an illustrious and pioneer medical, scientific, and philanthropic career, Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellman has. Sue's contributions to the Bay Area have been nothing short of incredible. She put Genentech on the map as a leading producer of important life-saving cancer medicines, and her leadership at both Genentech and later as the first woman chancellor of UCSF helped establish the Bay Area as one of the world's most important biotech hubs. Before we sit down with Sue, let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about this great leader.
Bay Area business, academic, and philanthropic giant Sue Desmond-Hellman never does anything halfway.
I hope that when I'm at my best, I'm fierce.
It's a trait that has made Desmond-Hellman a pioneering leader throughout an extraordinary career in life sciences, biotech, academia, and philanthropy.
When I get excited about things, I'm all in.
Inspired by her father's work as a pharmacist and her mother's career as a school teacher, Desmond-Hellman knew early on that she would focus her life's work on giving back and helping other people.
Seeing how My dad was so focused on people who were suffering or sick, made a big impact on my wish to see if I could do something to contribute in medicine.
After training at prestigious UC San Francisco to be a cancer doctor, Desmond-Hellman and her husband Nick, who is also a doctor, traveled to Uganda to study HIV/AIDS and help build the country's healthcare infrastructure. Witnessing the country's extreme poverty and suffering would shape her world, life view in profound ways.
I think it's not an exaggeration to say that in many ways I was never the same. I felt so turned upside down in terms of how I thought about my own need to give back and make a difference and just show up better and differently.
She has lived those words to their fullest. First at Bristol-Myers Squibb, and later, during 14 years at Genentech, Desmond-Hellman led the development of revolutionary new cancer medicines that would help millions of people around the world. She transformed Genentech into the nation's #1 producer of anti-cancer drug treatments, helping establish it as one of the preeminent biotech companies in the world, and the Bay Area as a global life sciences industry powerhouse and center of excellence. Forbes magazine named her one of the world's 7 most powerful innovators. Fortune magazine named her among the top 50 most powerful women in business 6 times. And she was named to the Biotech Hall of Fame in 2007. Throughout her career, she has never shied away from taking big risks and taking on new challenges.
The risk of failure for me is something that is a part of being an innovator. I don't think you can do excellent innovation without failing.
Or working extremely hard.
What I want it to be like when I'm leading is both fun and exhausting. You don't get great things without trying hard.
Desmond-Hellman's tireless work ethic and spectacular success in the private sector didn't go unnoticed.
66%.
In 2009, she became the first woman to be appointed Chancellor of UC San Francisco. Desmond-Hellman steered UCSF through the Great Recession, attracted hundreds of millions in new financial donations, led the university's massive expansion in San Francisco's Mission Bay, including the development of the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, deepened beneficial public-private partnerships, and pioneered the exciting new field of precision medicine. When Sue announced in 2009 that she was departing UCSF for yet another new challenge, then UC President Janet Napolitano praised her for leaving the university a better, more vibrant institution than when she arrived. That new challenge? Nothing less than solving some of the world's biggest and thorniest public health and social problems as CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the largest philanthropic foundation on the planet. Challenges like ending poverty, eradicating infectious diseases like polio and malaria, and empowering more people to become leaders by improving education. And when it became clear to Sue in 2019 that health issues and her own desire to spend time with husband Nick and family meant she couldn't give the Gates Foundation her all, she followed her own advice about not doing anything halfway and announced she was stepping down. Desmond-Hellman hasn't indicated what might be next for her. She remains a professor at UCSF, but you can be sure that whatever it is, she'll be all in.
I want everything I experience to be meaningful and special. And I've not always been great at work-life balance, but I'm really good at having fun.
Congratulations, Sue. It's great to see you, and I look forward to when we can get together in 2021. I also want to thank Nancy Bechtel, your good friend, for inviting you to join us. It's a great pleasure to have you as part of our Bay Area Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you, Alex. I really, really appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Have you gotten your statuette there?
I do, and I have to say it is spectacular. Look at how beautiful it is.
Beautiful.
Mantle behind me here. It's really lovely. I will cherish it. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Well, Sue, congratulations, and I love that you're love having fun. So, just a couple questions for us and the audience, so we can learn from you. I'm curious, given all your roles, what are the qualities of leadership that have been most important for you in your career?
Well, you heard some of them in that lovely video. I would say above all else, what I hold myself accountable for is bringing out the best in others. And we hear so much now about a sense of belonging, diversity. By the way, I'm thrilled to be in the same ceremony as Bernard Tyson, speaking of just an amazing person who I always looked up to. And I looked up to him because
Huh.
So if you'll bear with us, we've got a technical problem here, and we will come back.
Looks like I'm back on. Oh, whatever happened?
Apologies, everyone, for the technical difficulties. Ranjana, you're still.
I'm on. Am I on?
I believe we've lost the connection for Dr. Desmond-Hellman.
Okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, we do have to move to the next session in just about 10 seconds. So apologies for the issues, everyone, but we'll move now into the Trefethen induction. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, everybody, for that. Ranj and I particularly apologize to you because we were looking forward to that. So maybe we'll do this at another time. So thanks very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Not have that happen again today, but I apologize to Ranjana and to Sue. Hopefully we can get that interview done at a later date. Our next honoree is a family that has been a force for good in the Bay Area for 3 generations. To introduce them, I'm pleased to welcome Thomas Keller. Thomas has been setting the standard for luxury dining for over 25 years. His restaurants, including the French Laundry, Per Se, Bouchon, and Bouchon Bakery, are known worldwide. He is the only American-born chef to